Sorry, so. Yeah. Don't talk and laugh and giggle when you got the yellow part of the egg fluffy in your mouth, because it'll go other places. All right. Proverbs chapter 27 is where we are at. Huh? Thank you. Proverbs chapter 27. Sorry, Guardian. Go ahead and lead us in prayer loud.
Thank you for all you've given us. Help us to be better people. And
All right. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Right? So, this is very reminiscent of other passages where it talks about, I think in James it talks about, don't talk about what you're going to do or where you're going to go. If you're going to set up shop and do business in the town for a certain amount of time, right? But, so who knows the future?
God.
God, right? Did you know there's some things that God has resigned for His own knowledge that we'll never have? So, don't presume to know things that only God knows. Thank you. Don't presume to know things that only God can possibly know. All right. Verse 2. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Be humble. Don't presume honor. Be humble. Don't presume honor. If you have to tell everybody you're great, then guess what?
Only you know it.
Only you know it, right? If you have to tell everybody you're a leader, then guess what? You're your own leader. That's it, right?
And the only place for me to be a leader is in your own mind.
That's right. Yeah. Verse 3. A stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. What's that mean? Is the stone heavy? How do you know?
Picked it up.
Because the Bible says so, right? So is sand heavy?
Enough of it.
How do you know?
The Bible tells us that it's heavy.
The Bible says so.
How do you turn this?
How do you turn it?
Lisa Leonard
Oh.
said the
Is it
camera
sideways?
sideways.
Well, okay, we're going to change it from
You just hit that thing that.
here. There you go.
Right there.
We'll just do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me make sure it's not upside down.
I think it's right. All right. But, so it says, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. So if it makes a declaration that a stone's heavy, that sand is weighty, is that a positive or a negative? What's that meant to make you feel? Is that saying that it's good to have the provocation of fools, or what?
Not good.
Not good, right? It's talking about the burden that you carry, right? But a fool's provocation is heavier than both. And it's interesting because people say and do bizarre things, and you try to make the best sense of it, and you can't make the best sense of it. People say, hey, don't worry about it. That person doesn't know what they're talking about. If they don't know what they're talking about, if it's not true, then just don't worry about it. Anybody ever give you advice like that? Just cheer up. Just hang in there. It shouldn't bother you. Guess what the Bible says? Should it bother you? Right? It says, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. Is the provocation of a fool going to be something that is right or good or just or true? No. But is it, even though all that stuff, even though we know it has no, and people say, oh, you know, that person's words, don't worry about it, that person's words have no weight. Do they?
yes.
They do. People say, oh, sticks and stones can break my bones, but what?
Words will never harm me.
How many of you know that that's not true? It's not true. You can use words and tear people apart. Why do you think the Bible talks so much about what we do with our words? Is it because the Bible is just some stupid old book?
No.
It says, from the mouth comes overflow of the heart. It says that from the mouth can be a wellspring of life or of death. But we say, oh, but words can't ever hurt us. But they do. Right? Absolutely. So don't underestimate the provocation of fools. Don't underestimate the provocation of fools. Verse 4. Wrath is cruel. Anger is overwhelming. But who can stand before jealousy? And there's a number of different things. You can look at this and apply it to a number of different scenarios. My first thought is that this is in relation to sexual immorality or sexual infidelity in relationships, right? Not in any relationship, right? But in marriage in particular, right? It says, wrath is cruel. By the way, if you cheat on your spouse, do you think they'll have some wrath? Do you think they'll have some anger? Right? It says, but who can stand before jealousy? Right?
It doesn't necessarily have to do with that.
I agree. That's why I said first spot we're looking at is with infidelity. I look at this also too, right? The Bible says about God that He's what kind of God? A jealous God. Right? Does God have wrath? Is that a real thing? Can God treat a people with cruelty? It's a thing, right? But notice it says, but who can stand before jealousy? If our God is a jealous God, how would we provoke that jealousy? What kind of things could we do to provoke that jealousy?
Disobedience.
Disobedient? It goes back to the same concept of infidelity, right? How do you provoke jealousy from your spouse? Have a wandering heart, right? Eyes and feet and hands that pursue somebody else. Guess what provokes God's jealousy? Have a wandering heart, eyes and feet and hands that pursue something else or somebody else or some other.
And any of the works of the flesh, that it talks about in Ephesians.
Right, right. He expects a certain. Does He expect anything from us?
Yes.
Obedience.
Obedience, right? Striving. That isn't to say that we get obedience flawless, but we strive in who makes a difference. Christ makes a difference. A lot of people say, I don't have to strive because there was a show that I saw that had this is a theoretical type of person, but it had an active, proud, homosexual guy who also thought he was a proud Christian. Quote Bible verses to people. If we tell God, hey, it's one thing to wrestle with sin and to strive to overcome it, right? World of difference between that and saying, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to live in rebellion to you, but also, you're going to be my God. Who are you saying sets the terms of your relationship if you do that? Right? I set the terms. You don't tell me that we don't have a relationship. God, who are you to say we don't have a relationship? You see what I'm saying? Do you think God has any voice, any say in it? And it's an interesting thing too, because people do that as well with one another. They say, hey, who are you to tell me that we don't have a relationship? Someone can treat you lousy and terrible and throw you down on the ground and kick you and beat you and then say, hey, we have a relationship. Well,
Not a good one.
not a good one. Right? Right. That's so wrath is cruel, anger is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Don't test God's jealousy. If you're going to belong to God, belong to Him fully. And I get that you're not going to be able to belong to Him fully, but strive to belong to Him fully and let Jesus make up that difference. Verse 5, here's an interesting thing. I want to share with you a phrase that I heard on a TV show. Guy was working with a gal and he's at like a job fair. And he sends a gal to go find a sheet of paper so they can take names and write names and stuff on it and whatnot. The gal leaves and the guy says, while she was there, the guy's saying, come on, you're not doing your job, you're supposed to go find a piece of paper, and the gal leaves. And then the guy's standing there and he says, honestly, between you and me, she's a wonderful person, but I would never tell it to her face. Right? Do people treat people like that sometimes? where they actually think they're good people, but they would just never say it to their face. Not even intentionally. It's not that they're thinking that, but people, do they function by that capacity sometimes, where they think, that's a great person, I think highly of them, but it just is the case that I would never tell that to their face. Or does that never happen? Right? So here's what the verse says. Better is an open rebuke than what?
Secret love.
Than secret love. So the Bible suggests that is a thing. Right? Better is an open rebuke than hidden love. If you love somebody, should you tell them? Or should you keep it to yourself? You should tell people. The people you love, let them know that you love them. That shouldn't be a thing you keep secret. And I don't think it's a thing we intentionally keep secret, but we just do other stuff. One of the things that goes on in marriages is marriages, you'll have a husband and wife and they're working together in marriage and this and that, and initially during the honeymoon stage, I love you, I love you, I love you, let's go on dates and this and that, and then things get overwhelming, and then they end up into more of a business contract. That would never happen, right? And they both go through their day, and they forget, they might go 5-10 years and forget to stop for a second and tell the other one, hey, I love you. Right? So better is open rebuke than hidden love. So notice, which one of those things does it tell you not to do? Does it tell you not to do it?
No.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it's saying not to do either one. It's saying,
Let's say don't hate your love.
Right. Do people openly rebuke? By the way, which are people more likely to do between openly rebuke or openly love?
rebuke.
If you don't know, you just go on Facebook and you look at rants and raves. So you're Mr. Rants and Raves. Guess which one is most prevalent? People happy about their service or people upset about their service? All right, you go to a restaurant, you get good service, you might tip or something like that, but if you get bad service, are you going to tell people about it? Right? You're going to tell people about the injustice done with your broccoli. Right? It was not broccolified enough, you know. Yeah, so open rebuke, nothing necessarily wrong with open rebuke, but don't hide love. Whatever it is, right? Let people know where they stand in your life. Let people know where they stand in your life. If you love somebody and they don't know that you love them, I mean, I'll tell you, I know this, that there's some people that love me and haven't, like, and I'm not asking for people to say stuff, but I do a lot of stuff online. There are people that watch videos that appreciate things that I've done, and I know that they appreciate it, but they don't send me an email every time like, man, great point, this and that. But what a value it is if we speak well and speak highly of each other and tell each other when we love each other, right? And if you do that, then when you have something that you need to rebuke, guess what you can do? You can actually say, hey, you know I love you because I'm always coming to you and telling you that I love you, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong on this thing. You know. So, speaking of which, verse 6, faithful are wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. So which would you rather have? Fake kisses or a friend who will actually tell you, hey, what you're doing is wrong? Right? So if someone is a real friend, you don't mind if they correct you. But enemies pretend to be friends so that they can exploit your vulnerabilities. So you have a couple of thoughts going on here. One is, have a certain amount of guard on who you determine as your friend. My kids are not good at this, in truth. We'll go places and my kids, if they'll see somebody that they've seen, they don't know them, don't know their name, haven't ever spoken to them, but they've seen them in another location and they're familiar face. And I think all of us as kids, including myself as kids, see somebody that I don't know who they are, don't know what they're about, but I saw them somewhere else. Right? And so I say, that's my friend. Right? But you don't know that person. You don't even know what they think of you. You don't have any relationship with that person. So, you should have strong friends, but also to know that there are some folks who will flatter you just so that they can put themselves in a position where they can take advantage of your vulnerabilities. Right? Is that true or false? Are we taking a nap? I don't know what's going on.
I was reading.
Right? So, yeah, if someone is a real friend, you don't mind if they correct you. But enemies pretend to be friends so they can exploit your vulnerabilities. Verse 7. One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. What's that talking about? So it's talking about desire, right? What's your favorite food? Somebody give me their favorite food. Anything that you want. Imagine it's got no calories.
Steak.
Steak. So let's say you had steak. Do you like steak? Say you had the perfectly cooked steak. Would you eat it? Say you had 2 of them. Would you eat it? Say you had 3 of them. Would you eat it?
That's getting a little overboard now.
Say you had 20 of them and you had to eat it or you were going to die.
And you can stuff yourself.
Right?
You're gonna die.
You got to figure out, right? But would it be an enjoyable process at that point, right? Would it be an enjoyable thing, or would you be like, you're going to make me throw up?
It'd be drudgery.
It'd be drudgery. So notice it says, to one who is, the one who is full loathes honey. But to one who is hungry, likewise, right? Imagine the worst food. What's the worst food that you could have? I'll tell you, the answer is asparagus.
That's not what it said.
That's not true.
Oh, I like this.
Look, I knew I could start some trouble with that.
So what you're saying is, when you're hungry, then asparagus is going to be bittersweet.
Well, when you're hungry, right, you'll even, if I was starving to death and all that there was asparagus, guess what I would eat and be happy about? And even be grateful for.
And it'll even taste very good.
And it might even taste good. Because if I get hungry, if it's been long enough that I don't remember what food tastes like, you know, if I go 2 weeks and haven't had any food, I can say, this is the best thing I've had in 2 weeks.
Especially if you're wrapping in bacon.
Now that I like.
Or, so, when we were in Korea, went out to the field, been eating either MREs or something we eat out in the field.
Right.
When we went back to Garrison, went to, I think, Popeyes. I don't really like Popeyes,
Right.
but
Would you like it that
But when we went there, it was the best chicken I ever had.
Right. Even to this day, probably, huh? Yeah.
Well, there would have been steak at Popeyes, that would have been better, but.
Right. So, and this is a sentiment that you see, if you want to see how this applies to the spiritual person, right, to the actual soul, this is reflected in Matthew chapter 21, verse 28. So go to Matthew 21, verse 28, and you'll see this verse here about to one who is the one who is full is honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. So Matthew 15, verse 21 says this, and Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. Was she hungry? Was she desperate? Right? But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples begged him, saying, send her away, for she's crying out after us. He answered, I will send only the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he said, it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. So 3 times he's rejected her. That's a thing one could be bitter about. Right? But guess what? She said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs will eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. What did she just call herself with that?
A dog.
Right? She didn't even argue, I'm no dog. Right? She just said, I'll take whatever you got. Then Jesus answered, a woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desired. Her daughter was healed instantaneously. Right? So here's the deal. That is this verse 7 where it says, one who is full loathes honey, but one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. Did she get bitterness from Jesus? But how did it taste? Was she grateful for it? Right? Amen. God, keep me in a position where I'm hungry for what you've got to have, what you offer. Right? Verse 8. Verse 8. Like a bird that strays from his nest is a man who strays from his home. What's that talking about? Thank you. Right? The idea is don't have a wandering heart. Bird that strays from his nest, where should the bird, ideally, where should the bird be living?
At home.
In his nest, in his own home, right? He built the thing, put work into it. You ever seen all this, the work a bird puts into putting a nest together?
Yes.
Right? It's actually incredible the amount of care that they take to go get just the right stick and just the right thing and pack it in just right and bring just enough mud to put together, then to abandon that. Same thing goes on in marriages. To put all that work into a marriage and then just walk away from it. Right? It's crazy. My wife put a lot of work into making me the man I am. Right? A lot of work. It's one of the reasons she's like, I can't leave you. It's too much investment. Right?
This also applies to the relationship with God.
Absolutely. Yeah, the amount of work that you put into your relationship with God, just to walk away, it's crazy. Verse 9. Well, I should say unless you haven't put any work into it. Right? And then I guess you think it's reasonable. Verse 9, oil and perfume make the heart glad. And by the way, this is not a statement about allergies. So if you've got allergies and you really hate oil and perfume, then that's not what he's talking about. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. What do those have to do with each other? What does oil and perfume that makes a heart glad have to do with the counsel of a friend?
You like it. It's,
Right? The Bible will talk about the prayers of the saints as being a pleasing aroma to God, won't it? You ever smelled something and you thought, you ever walk outside and somebody else is barbecuing and all of a sudden you want to make a new friend? Right? But you walk outside and you smell it, you're like, I want more of that. Right? So oil and perfume and we could word it this way. Steak and bacon and eggs make the heart glad. Right?
Or asparagus, butter, and
bacon.
Right? But the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. So, and notice too, it's not just any kind of counsel. What kind of counsel is it?
Good counsel, earnest counsel.
Earnest counsel. What is the point of throwing the word earnest in there, do you think?
Sincere,
Sincere?
well,
Honest.
that
yes.
not any kind of counseling is good.
Yeah, not all counsel is good. And I think too, when I think of the word earnest, I think of in deep trouble right now, I need help. Like an immediacy, right? An earnestness to it. So what's the word earnest mean? Do we know? People are all looking up the word earnest now. So my understanding of the word earnest, it means immediate, right? In a time of like distress.
And sincerity.
Yeah, absolutely. Sincerity would be part of that as well, right? But it's like, do some people give platitudes for counsel?
Yes, if they think that's what you want to hear and they want to hear the
So,
truth.
so people might say, even though they may think it's not going to get better, they might say, don't worry about it, things will get better. What is that? It's just a generic statement that people throw around, but they haven't put any thought into it. I've had people tell me, I'm going through the same stuff you are. And I'm like, no, you're not. It's like if somebody dies. And you say, I understand, if I had nobody died in my life, and I go to somebody who's just had a loved one pass away, and I say, hey, I know what you're going through. Do you? That's not earnest counsel. That's like a cheesy platitude is what that is. So, did somebody look up earnest?
Yeah.
What's it say?
Sincere and intent.
Sincere.
Zealous. I forget what else it said.
Sincere and intent, zealous.
Grave, important.
Grave, important.
Serious and intent.
Right.
Intent, mental
Sincerely
state.
zealous.
Considerable, impressive degree of love.
So yeah. So, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. So one of the things I think about too, the Bible will talk about how the right word at the right time is like a refreshing spring, right? Isn't it nice when people have the right words at the right time to encourage you, to build you up, to give you good advice? Verse 10, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend. Let's pause and break that down. What's that talking about? Don't forsake your friend or your father's friend. So I would suggest to you that you should care about the relationships in your life. And it's an interesting thing too. How many of you guys live in the same town as like brothers and sisters, mother and father? Is there anybody, aside from my kids? Right? But anybody over 18 in here that like lives in a town with their mother and sister, brother and father? Any of those things? Now some of you, I think Mike your kids live in the same town?
One.
You got one kid lives in the same town? Do you have kids in the same town?
I have a child, yes.
You got one kid
Young
in
man.
the same town? But you got more kids in that though, right?
Yes,
And they've gone off different places?
yes.
Guess what most families do? Spread out. They go different places, right? So notice something that goes on here. It says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your what?
Brothers.
Brother's house in the day of calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. I've got a brother who's far away. My brother has a brother who's far away. As a matter of fact, right? I've got sisters who are far away. Yeah, my brother's brother is me, but him being far away by virtue, I'm far away, right? And so guess what? If he gets in trouble, if he gets stranded on the side of the road in Portales, New Mexico, guess who he calls to come pick him up?
A friend from there.
Somebody else, not me,
No,
right? He doesn't call me. And so, does that mean I don't love my brother? My brother doesn't love me?
no.
It's a practical understanding of the reality. And so it says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. And the idea is this: be a good and loyal friend and use the resource of the good and loyal friends in your life. I'm not saying abuse the resource of your good and loyal friends, but be willing, if you have good and loyal friends, be willing to call them in your times of need. Be willing to say, hey, I've got trouble, I got strife, I got, my house fell on me, or whatever it is, that's going on, and ask for help. Verse 11. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. What kind of person is the person that's going to reproach you? Friend or foe? Typically.
If they do it the right way, they're a friend.
Right. If they do it the right way, they're a friend. But there's a little bit of an indicator here for this particular type, because it says, be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who approaches me. Did you know people who are looking for problems with you will look all over the place for problems with you? And if they can't find a problem with you and you've got kids, guess what? Where they'll look next? They'll look at your kids. If they can't find a problem with your kids, guess what? If you own a car, guess what they'll look at? There's a problem with your car. If you own a house, guess what they'll look at? Problem with your house. If you're part of a political party, guess what they'll look at? Problem with your political party. If you have hair, guess what they'll look at? If you don't have hair, did you know if someone wants to find something wrong with you, they can?
Sure.
This is not rocket science. Did you know if someone wants to find something good about you, they can? Right? So, it says, be wise, my son. So the guy is asking his son, he says, be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. There's going to be stuff that someone who just looking for trouble with you, there's going to be stuff they can find. But if you can have kids that are godly children, you will have eliminated an entire spectrum, an entire, what's the word I use? An entire category of trouble for the parent, right? So godly and wise children remove a whole category of trouble a person would otherwise have. If you're striving to be a godly person and people are in conflict with you and your kids are a mess, does that just give people more ammunition? Right? Absolutely. Verse 12. The prudent see, by the way, do you guys remember what the word prudent means? Wisdom and prudence are very similar in nature. Prudence is knowing what not to do. Is knowing the thing not to do. That's what prudence is. It's knowing what not to do. He says, the prudence sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. What it's talking about here is, guys, it's talking about having the ability to anticipate. If you're going to do a thing, right? If you're going to get under, if you're going to get under your garage door, I hate that I am using garage doors now as action points, but I think everybody does. Here you go. I'm going to use primers. I'm going to use Mike and his exploits. Right? If Mike is trying to reload a primer, and he puts a primer and puts a thing and then overloads it with everything and is putting too much pressure on everything, can you anticipate that something may go wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh yeah. Right? You got it, the idea is to be able to see a thing that is stupid and then not do it. You got to be able to anticipate. And oftentimes, and I'll tell you, some of the stuff that we do, even as a church body, you could predict the outcome of the stuff, But guess what? We do it anyway. You predict that's going to cause trouble. That's going to be painful. That's going to get somebody hurt. But guess what? We do it anyway. I've been guilty of that. I'm not the only person that's been guilty of that. It's the ability to be able to see what your actions are going to do, and then don't do that thing, right? The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Verse 13. Take a man's garment when he has put up security for a stranger. Hold it in pledge when he puts up security for an adulteress. It's an interesting thing. You know, there's verses that have talked about not to keep a pledge overnight, not to keep somebody's cloak overnight and whatnot. And so it's interesting because here's one that specifically says to keep the pledge, right? To take the pledge for those things. So what's the difference between this and a regular pledge someone might put up? Right? Take a man's garment when what?
Put up security for a stranger.
Right? So first off, you can learn, guess what you shouldn't be doing? Don't be putting up security for a stranger. Right? If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need a loan, there's this guy, I don't know him, but I vouch for him. What? If you're going to vouch for him, then you need to vouch for him. Right? So, yeah, when you attach your name, let me find my...
13.
Thank you. Oh, whoever you attach your name to matters. You will be affected by those you stand up for. Think about this for yourself and think about this for others. You'll be affected by those you stand up for. If you stand up for wicked people, guess what you're going to look like? Likewise, if you stand up for righteous people, guess what you're going to look like? Right? Likewise. Now here's the flip side of that. Are there people who would, Betty, are there people who would be willing to stand up for you?
Yes.
I think so. I'm one of them, just so you know. Right? Right? You have a responsibility. If you know there's people that would be willing to stand up for you, what quality of person should you be?
Upright, honest,
Amen.
trustworthy.
So that you don't betray other people's trust. Likewise, I have to be an honest, godly person. If I think people should stand up for me, guess what kind of person I have to be? A person worth standing up for. And I have to stand up for people who are worth standing up for. You see what I'm saying? So he says, take a man's garment when he's put a security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts up a security for an adulteress. Don't attach your name to scandalous people. Don't stand up for scandalous people. Don't be a scandalous person. Right? Doesn't make any sense. Verse 14. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, and if you were to stop right there, guess what you'd think? This is going to be a good thing. It's not a good thing. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as what?
Cursing.
As cursing.
You're waking everybody up.
Waking everybody up. You've got to get their sleep. If I know that I'm probably going to, or have potential to call somebody at like 2 or 3 in the morning, do you think I do that at 2 or 3 in the morning, or do I arrange that beforehand to make sure I've got permission to call them at 2 or 3 in the morning? Cal? There's been a couple of times, yeah, or send a text, right? There have been a couple of times when I've called Cal at weird hours, and I either arrange it before, or I'll send a text ahead of time, so that if he's asleep, I'm not waking him up, so he's not like...
This text wakes him up.
Oh, the text wakes him up?
I don't remember that.
Don't remember that? He was sleeping through it, that's okay. But, it goes back to the whole concept of there are ways that you can interact with people, even if you say the right words, right, that you can be displaying the wrong intent, right? So, don't be condescending. That's the concept. Don't be condescending. Be considerate. If you call somebody at 2 in the morning and say, hey, I just want to make sure you're getting good sleep. Just call them to make sure you're still asleep. Right? Nah, maybe not so much, right? I've had people tell me, I've had people walk by somebody who I know is hostile toward me, and they, hello, hi, how's it going? And they do that. Anybody ever do that where they just smugly, snidely behave towards you so that they're trying to drive you nuts, they know they're doing it, you know they're doing it, but they're doing it in a way where everybody else maybe won't notice it for what it is? Or does that not happen in the world? Surely people don't try to push each other's buttons, right? So, yeah. Verse 15. A continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. I didn't write this stuff. But is it true? I mean, whether we like Scripture, what the thing says or not, is it true? Right? So, a continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. So what's the likeness of it?
Torture.
Torture, right? And by the way, I don't think that this is exclusive to wife. See, one of the things that guys do is say, is about a wife. Are there men that are the same way? I have been in a house, and I did work on somebody's house, and I saw the husband, every chance he got, berate his wife. Not in over-the-top ways, he kept it just subtle enough so she would be polite enough to let him do it. Guess what? That's torture. That's like psychological messed upness. Don't do that. Don't allow it to be done to you. It's not okay. Bottom line is this, though. What's the word in there, the one word that is causing all the trouble for us? And it isn't the word wife, so you know. Continual?
Quarrelsome.
Quarrelsome. I think it's quarrelsome. Because if you change quarrelsome to a lot of other words, this thing would mean a whole lot of other stuff. Right? If you had a continually loving wife, would that be okay? Continually loving spouse, would that be okay? It's just once you get continually quarrelsome that you run into trouble. Right? So yeah, a continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. To restrain her is to restrain the wind, or to grasp oil in one's right hand. Now this is my favorite one, is to grasp oil in one's right hand. How many of you have ever done baking and cooking and stuff, or ever put oil in your hand for any particular reason?
Yes.
Now have you ever put so much oil in there that you thought, oops, that's too much, and then felt it starting to go through your fingers and realized there's no way I'm going to be able to keep this in my hand, and I think I've just made a mess? Right? I've been there with a lot of different scenarios. Like, I know what that is. And so notice he says, to restrain her is like restraining the wind. Are you going to be able to do it? No. Right? Or to grasp oil in one's right hand. How tight can you grasp and squeeze with your fist and oil is still going to come out somewhere? Right? You're not going to be able to stop that. Right? And so that's the idea. You've got yourself in a real predicament if you train yourself to behave in a quarrelsome fashion with your spouse. So, you'll have a hard time calming a wife that wants to fight. And you can change the word wife. Same thing is true. You're going to have a hard time calming a husband that wants to fight.
Contentious. What
Right.
King James says.
Contentious? There you go. Amen. Verse 17.
Change it to person.
Person?
Yeah.
Oh,
When
yeah.
When you say husband or wife, you're making an assumption that this applies
Exclusively to marriage, yeah.
to the other person in the house.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's almost, to calm a person who wants to fight. Yeah, that's fair.
And it happens outside the
Pardon me.
Well, sometimes it's people's kids.
Yeah. Sometimes
So
it
it
can.
could just be a person.
Yeah. I have seen parents who try to get their kids to do a thing, but the kid just wants to fight and argue about it. Don't want to do it. I'm going to sit here and make it not happen. That would never happen, right?
I mean, not my own children. I'm saying I
Oh.
know of people that have children, who their kids constantly want to fight. Right? They want to argue and
Right.
talk back and cuss their parent out or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Right?
Verse 17, famous passage. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Or iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. Or one man sharpens his brother. Don't know what your rendition of it is. Super famous passage, though. It's been put on a lot of t-shirts and used in a lot of stuff. But how does iron sharpen iron? What does iron have to do to sharpen iron?
friction.
Friction, what else? So what is
They come into contact.
come into contact? There you go. To get friction, you have to have Contact. And so some people say, I don't need my brother and sister in Christ. I'm going to go and forget this. And then guess what you don't have? Contact. If you don't have contact, then you don't have iron sharpening iron. That's the truth of it. If we're all going to be islands, there is no iron sharpening iron. You have to come into contact with one another. So we are sharpened through fellowship. We're contact with one another. If we will not have fellowship with one another, if we will not have contact with one another, we're not going to be sharpened. And part of that sharpening, I'm going to be honest with you, part of that sharpening is Cal and I hanging out and this and that, and we get frustrated and I say a thing and Cal thinks that's stupid. Or Cal says a thing and I think that's stupid. And we get frustration, we get some friction, and so then we talk with each other and I explain, well, here's why I think that's dumb, and he said, well, here's why I think what you said was dumb, and then we can, right, wear those little things
I'm
down.
not stopping.
What's that? And I'm not stopping? It's going to continue?
I don't care how much you like that stuff on the side of the road.
Yeah. He won't stop for highway treasure. Right? So I don't understand because it's got the word treasure in it. People pass a lot of money on the side of the road. Anyways. So yeah. We are sharpened through what? Through fellowship. So is fellowship important?
Yes.
Fellowship matters, right? Is it something God wants for us, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging? Yes. Verse 18. Whoever tends a fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who guards his master will be honored. What are the commonalities between those two thoughts, and why are they sitting together in a verse?
The person that's tending the fig tree is taking care of it.
And what does that look like? Describe what that looks like over time.
Watering, starting out with sowing,
Okay.
planting.
And how many times do they got to sow it?
Sow it once.
Okay. Then how many times do they got to water it?
Well, I don't know for a fig tree, but water.
Yeah.
However often it requires watering, and then you pull the weeds, if that's required. I don't know if it thinks something's real better than weeds or not, but.
You have to harvest fruit before it falls on the ground.
Right. And how often are and the idea with the tree, right? So it says whoever tends a fig tree will eat its fruit. It's the idea of this ongoing commitment and loyalty to the tree, right? And it says, and he who guards his master will be honored. I will propose to you the commonality between those is he's saying you should, right? A guy who protects and guards and honors and is loyal to his master is going to be honored, right? So the bottom line is this: be loyal. Be loyal. And I'm not saying loyal to the extent that you just go along with whatever thing is going on. I'm not saying that we should condone sin and approve of sin and for the sake of loyalty. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is if sin isn't an issue, be loyal. If you come across godly people and they're being godly people and you don't see any reason why they're not godly people, be loyal to them. I'm going to tell you, a church should be loyal to a good eldership. A church should be loyal to a good preacher. A good preacher should be loyal to a good church. A good eldership should be loyal to a good church. A good husband. And you want to see some irony. Should a good husband be loyal to a good wife? Should a good husband be loyal to a lousy wife? Now here's the real challenge we get for it. Because even if the wife is lousy, guess what? Should he be loyal?
Yes.
Right? That isn't to say he approves of everything she's doing. Loyalty and condonement are not the same thing. Don't confuse those to be the same thing, you know. Verse 19. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects the man. So if you look in water and you see the reflection of your face, is that if you look in water and you can see that there's a big lump on your forehead. You know, you just woke up next to a river, you don't know what's going on, you look in there and you see there's a big lump on your forehead. Can you trust that there's a big lump on your forehead? Right? It's a dependable thing, right? So, as in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. So, is it going to be the case that my heart will reflect the type of man I am? It's going to be the case. Now, here's an interesting problem with this thing, because then my question is, how do we know the quality of a man? Who knows the hearts of men?
God.
God. The absolute truth is only God knows the hearts of men, but I will tell you, what God sees in the hearts of men is what the man is, period. That's the absolute truth of it. Now there are things that overflow out of the heart. What are some things that overflow out of the heart? And how do things overflow from the heart? Through the mouth. The Bible says, out of the mouth comes the overflow of the heart. What are some other ways the heart overflows from a person?
Their actions.
Their actions, right? He said, you can tell the tree by its
Fruit.
fruit. So there's overflow that comes from the mouth. There's overflow that comes from the fruit and from the product of a person. And those things can kind of direct us to the right idea. But in truth, God only knows what is going on with our heart. Because I'll tell you, I struggle to know what's going on with my heart. So if we can't figure ourselves out, just be cautious about determining with surety the heart of somebody else. However, the mouth and the actions speak heavily to that, right? Verse 20. Sheol and Abaddon. What are Sheol and Abaddon?
Hell and destruction.
And some of yours might say death and Hades. Anybody got death and Hades for theirs? But the idea is this. Sheol is the place of the dead. It's Abraham's bosom. Abaddon is hell. Right? So this is what you got going on. It says, Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied. So how many people is death willing to take?
All.
Everybody. Right? Would death have been willing to take Enoch? Would have been willing to, but guess what God did?
Took them away.
He said, no, death, you can't have him. Amen. Enoch's got to be a great guy. But they're never satisfied. It says, and never satisfied are what?
Eyes of men.
The eyes of men. So what is this addressing? When it talks about eyes of men, yeah, it's talking about covenant, it's talking about greed. Right? It is a natural phenomenon. The idea is this. Men want more like death wants more. Greed is common to man. There's very few men who say, hey, I've achieved enough. I've gotten enough. And that isn't to say that there aren't any people, any of mankind that would say that would put a limit on their own boundaries. But the common thing to mankind is what? Gotta have more, gotta have more, gotta have more. Right? Verse 21.
Some of that is taught.
Some of that is taught.
Well, so advertising on TV, there are things on TV that they put in advertising. You don't know what you want until it's sold to you in a way that makes you want it.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know I wanted that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I do think that the whole nature of advertising is to exploit the greed of mankind. Right? To really work on man's greatest weaknesses. So, the crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold. A man is tested by his praise. Are these three separate statements that have nothing to do with one another, or what's going on in this verse? What's a crucible do in regard to silver and gold?
Refines it.
Refines it, right? Crucible refines it, shapes it, right? You use it to heat it, right? To separate dross from the quality material. So the crucible is for silver, the furnace is for gold, and I think the idea is likewise, a man is tested by his praise. And I don't know, but there's two ways you could read that. Either a man is tested by the way he accepts praise, or by the way he praises. Right? A man is tested by his praise. Could you say that that a guy who just accepts all the praise in the world and just goes out hunting and seeking praise, that says something about the guy?
It does. It says he's a vain person that's looking for only, give me more of this praise.
Right. And the guy who will never praise anyone else, won't praise God, won't speak well of anybody else. Is there something to be said about that guy? Right? Yeah. So, a man is tested by his praise. So I come to this thought with it, is that there's times when God will allow us to be praised, and how we deal with that, God is testing us. He's separating dross from us. There's times when we may not get praise and we feel like we deserve it. God is testing us to see how we're going to behave. Right? There's times when we're praising with all the wrong motive, wrong intent. We might praise somebody so we can get something. Oh, that's really great. Can I have one? Right? God is testing us with that. We might praise somebody for good reasons, and God is testing. By the way, does the Bible say give honor to whom honor is due?
Yes.
Right? So are there reasons to give some praise? I'm not talking about God level praise, but are there reasons to praise men? Right? Yes. There's godly reason. Give honor to where honor is due. Also realize God is God and I'm not. You're not. We are not. Right? But how you interact and how you deal with praise matters, right? So how you praise and how you accept praise will speak to your quality. Verse 22. Crush a fool in a mortar with a pestle. What's a mortar and a pestle? The little grinding bowl, right, with the stick. My stepfamily is Cambodian, and we always had a little thing when we grind up, I shouldn't say we, my stepmom would grind up all kinds of weird spells or something in there, I don't know, right? And pour them over our food, you know, so. But she, you know, I'm kidding about the spells.
To make it taste good.
Yeah, spices, that's a better word. Yeah, I was it's just a joke. People are like, oh, he's trying to say his mom. No. But, you know, you grind stuff up, right? And you make it finer and finer and finer, and you beat the snot out of it in there. And it says, crush a fool in a mortar with a pestle, along with crushed grain, yet what? Right? I think the idea has got to do with discipline. You can discipline, and you can even discipline to the point of grinding someone to a pulp. But guess what a fool will learn? They'll learn nothing, right? So one quality of a fool is their inability to learn. One quality of a fool is their inability to learn. Now you can behave foolish and then learn and change your behavior, and guess what? You're not. You're not a fool, right? Have you ever done it? By the way, is there anybody here who's ever done anything foolish? I have, right? So I heard you talking about your primers the other day that exploded, and I couldn't tell if that was on purpose or accident, to be honest.
That was on purpose.
Oh, that was on purpose. Oh, good. Are there scenarios where, not you,
The accident would have been
okay,
if when he did it,
it didn't explode?
no, it took his eye out.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you wear eye protection when you were?
Because, well,
So if it took your
There's
eye
been
out,
somebody injured who was bad injured, who had their primers out in an open container and was smoking while their primers were out. So a bad accident had occurred there. So because a hot spark went into all those primers, you know, and it just doesn't make one go pop.
yeah, one pop makes another pop.
and the primer's actually a tiny explosive.
Right,
Each primer has a tiny explosive in it, so.
right.
No, the accident would have been big if I had the bullet, shot the bullet, and the one bullet lodges just a little bit in the barrel, and then load another live one in behind it, and then pull the trigger again, you know, then.
That would have been bad. So now, here's the deal, right? Foolish thing to be smoking by primers, okay? You know what makes a fool? Someone who smokes by primers, all that stuff explodes, he gets out of the hospital, and guess what he does? Goes back and sits down and thinks, I'm going to pack bullets, and smokes by his primers again. Now that's a fool. A guy who cannot learn from his mistakes, will not learn from it. I'm going to tell you too, this might hurt some people's feelings, because there are, I'm sure in this room, there's people that we know that are this way. That got lung cancer, emphysema, something like that from smoking, and are sitting at home. I've been talking with people, you know, as minister. I've gone into people's houses where they're on
Oxygen.
hospice. You know, do you know why hospice exists? You know, hospice is one of the greatest ways to predict the end of life for somebody. When somebody goes on hospice, I mean 99% of the time it's 6 months that they've got left. So you go in and somebody's on hospice, they already had lung issues, lung cancer, all this kind of stuff, emphysema, and guess what they're doing while they're on their oxygen thing?
Smoking.
Insane.
Absolutely.
Insane. Breaks my brain. And leading up to that whole thing, they spent probably the past 10 years on oxygen and smoking. Don't understand it, right? Crush a fool in mortar with a pestle, along with crushed grain, yet his followers will not depart from him. They will not learn from their mistakes. It's a foolish way to behave. So now we've got this next bit here, and really the rest of this is an interesting passage, because in truth, 23 to the end of the chapter is talking about retirement. There are lessons to be learned apart from retirement, but 23 to 27 is just, it really is just talking about retirement, I think. So here's what we've got. Know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds. And so if we want to look at this, the idea is this: be aware of your business, of your bank accounts, of your property, of your assets. Be aware of those things. But on a spiritual sense, there is this secondary thing that we can catch on the spiritual sense where be self-aware. Know where you're at in the first place. You're going to have a hard time going anywhere with strategy if you don't know where you're at in the first place, right? But be aware of your business, of your bank account, of your property, of your assets. And you get verse 24, for riches do not last, what?
Forever.
And does a crown endure all generations? What's the answer to that?
No.
No. No nation has ever in the history of the world stayed the nation of the history of the world. Guess what that means for the United States? Is the United States going to forever and always be the world power?
No.
It's not going to happen. I'm disappointed in it too. But it's reality, right? That's what it is. So, what we find from that is that success is temporary. Is this a financial statement? Is this a statement that has to do with retirement? If you think, oh, I'm going to go do construction. I've got a call, guy same age as myself. His name is Isaac, great friend of mine. Got a call from him the other day, and he said, oh man, I'm getting old, my body's getting tired, I can't keep doing. And he's the guy that taught me how to do garage doors. He said, I can't keep doing garage doors, man, I'm getting tired and worn out. I used to do tile, and I will tell you, between the two of them, tile is way harder than garage doors. Much more physically demanding than garage doors. But he's like, I'm getting tired, I'm getting worn out. Don't want to do garage doors forever. If you imagine, and there's good money to be made in all kinds of construction, but if you imagine, hey, I'm making good money today doing construction, therefore, when I'm 80, I'll still be making good money. No. And so some people will think that way, and then they'll blow all their, get money, blow it, burn through it, thinking, well, that's okay because I can still do this tomorrow. You know, all it takes for a guy doing construction is one fall off of the ladder. All it takes for a guy doing construction with a heart murmur is drinking a little bit too much coffee on one day. Right? Doesn't take a lot to mess up your ideal business strategy, right? So, riches do not last forever, and does a crown endure to all generations? The idea is that success is temporary. Now you get verses 25 to 27. And you kind of got to back up, so I'm going to back up to 23 because really it's all one sentiment. So he says, know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds. If you do this, then 25 to 27 will be true. If you don't do verse 23, 25 to 27 will be false. So know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever, and does a crown endure to all generations? When grass is gone and new growth appears, and vegetation of the mountains is gathered, the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats the price of a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household, and maintenance for your girls. And what kind of girls does that talk about? Any ideas? So, one of the things that they would do is young gals would go, you see a little bit of this with David, but this was a common practice where young gals would go and basically do like housework and live-in help. But David brought in a girl just to sleep with him in a non-sexual way for the purpose of keeping warm. I don't know if you guys recall that, but there was a gal that he had, and I want to say, can't remember her name, but the son that was causing trouble wanted to marry her so that he could have extra authority in the kingdom. As a political stunt, he wanted to marry that girl, had to have that girl as his wife. But She was his electric blanket. I'm sure she did some service to him and whatnot. And the idea is this: did you know that when you get old, if you get old enough, you will probably need hands around the house? You'll probably need help to do some stuff. So he says, when the grass is gone and new growth appears and vegetation of the mountains is gathered, the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats, the price of a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food, and the food of your household, and maintenance for your girls. And I think that's talking about your folks that are going to basically do your living health care stuff.
It says to nourish your female servants.
To nurse your female servants. There you go, same concept, right? Yeah, enough milk to for your household and to nourish your female servants, right? So yeah, if you do verse 23, you'll have a retirement, right? If you pay attention to your finances, if you pay attention to the condition of your flocks and fields, right? If you pay attention to your property, keep an eye on your property and your finances and pay attention and use that stuff wisely, and guess what you can have? A retirement. But there's some folks who, if they get money, they spend money. And guess what they'll have? A hard, stinking time. And that's the whole reason, by the way, that they invented the Social Security system. Was because they said, look, people are not to be trusted to manage their own affairs. So guess who has been so gracious to take on that duty for us? The government. What a pal, right? They're doing a bang-up job.
Well, they did a good job with the propaganda. I have members of my family that they only live on their Social Security because they had no other plan
Right.
earlier in their life.
And that shouldn't have been the case. And by the way, too, whenever you create a safety net for that, guess what people stop doing? If you create a safety net, guess what people start trusting? I don't need to worry about retirement because I've got Social Security. Social Security take care of that.
But how many people can live on that?
That's exactly
Social
right.
Security check.
Everybody that I know that the only income they've got is their Social Security is stressed out of their mind. They got their house paid off, they got their car paid off, and they're still like, I've had people sit down with their bills, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't even know how that's really possible to live off of. I mean, even if you get rid of the house payment, now there's some people who've got so much in Social Security that they're going to be fine. You know, they just might have to not have that 800,000 foot house. But most people, that's not the case, you know. So guys, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. We got a couple of chapters left for 28, right? We'll be on 28 next week, 29, 30, 31. There's only 31 chapters in Proverbs. And then we'll be on the other books. By the way, I really enjoy Proverbs. I enjoy the wisdom literature stuff. You know why they call it wisdom literature? Because it does stuff to you. It's supposed to make you wise. Right? Amen.
And applies to life.
Applies to life, right? If you could get yourself to learn the concepts and actually enact them in Psalms and Proverbs, you'll be like on the scale of this world, you'll basically be a genius. Whether or not you make much money, don't care. But you will be able to navigate the stuff of this life with genius level capacity. Because you're not even fighting against much. Guess how wise most people are, honestly.
Not very.
Right? You know the whole common sense is not common thing? It's true, right? So
That's,
right. Mike, you want to go and lead us in prayer? Thank you.
Father art in heaven, thank you for this day and this lesson and this knowledge you've given us, Lord. Thank you for your word that you've spelled out so many things to live by, dear Lord. Help us to always remember all blessings come from you and go into the world and tell others about your wonderful saving grace and your promise of heaven and your word. And the way to get to heaven is through you, dear Lord. Help us with following those steps. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys for being here.